if you have any questions at any time, you can always type them in the chat box. And like the other exam prep that I've done for this semester, I've winnowed out everything extra and just focusing on stuff that you will see on your exam. Your next exam, it opens up in lesson 11, and it's on landslides and flooding. So it will be those two together, and then your final exam opens on lesson 12. Maybe it's 13. It's like right after the other one. I don't know why they didn't space them better, but anyway, so this is like part 1 of our exam 3 exam prep. And so here we go. Landslides, I think, is really difficult because there's so much new vocabulary, especially because most students have never heard of mass wasting. It sounds maybe like something really gross or just something bizarre. And that's just kind of the overall, we give every type of landslide there in the category of mass wasting. So slumps and rock slides and avalanches, and debris flows, we would consider them all mass wasting disasters. Colloquially, we say landslides for all of them is how we would, how they would report on it in the news, but landslides themselves have very specific characteristics that most people don't know. So what I've done is on the slideshow that we're going to go through, and everyone, say a little prayer, my voice holds up. We have anything that's like word for word the same as what you'll see in the exam. I highlighted in yellow because I think one barrier to a lot of our exam questions is that the wording's unfamiliar. That's feedback that I've gotten over the last couple semesters is I knew all the stuff, I understood all the concepts, but the wording of the test questions was really odd and confusing. So to try to minimize that, that's what I've done. So anything you see highlighted in yellow, you'll see that word for word on the exam. Sorry, let me revise that. There's a test bank, and you'll get a certain amount of questions from the exam bank. So your exam won't have all of these. I did all of the exam bank questions. Anyway, so factors that lead, contribute to landslides. It's these 4 things. And I think I haven't posted landslide reading quiz feedback yet, but this slide is there as well. And I'm working I'm working on catching up. Don't get pneumonia. Never had it before. Well, actually I had it as an infant. My mom told me today. I didn't know that. So it's my second time. I don't recommend it. So these are the 6 things that contribute to landslides or any type of mass wasting: lack of vegetation, clay layer, saturation, tilted layers, steep slopes, and excavation. And we've all hopefully watched as the wildfires ravaged California and parts of Utah and other places this year. And now, I mean, that was natural disaster number 1. And if there's a big disaster, they never come in sets of 1. There will be something else. And usually what happens is because the wildfire burns out all the vegetation, the next spring, there's often horrible landslides. So beyond this class, and as you continue being a citizen of the world and paying attention to what's happening around you, that's what I would maybe watch for, is we will see landslides in those areas that the vegetation was burned out. In your reading, it talks about the angle of repose, and basically that just means is there's a certain point where a slope becomes too steep. And so anything above 34 degrees is a slope that is likely to slide at some point. And I mean, it depends a little bit on the different types of material. Angular pebbles have more strength of cohesion than fine sand, but we would say, you know, shoot for the lowest slope that you can get away with if you can. So that would be 34 degrees. There's just lots of ways we can get something steeper than that. One thing is sometimes slopes are over steepened by this way. So when we look at areas prone to landslides, number one is if we see a previous landslide. If there was a landslide once, there will always be another one that happens. If the slope gets unstable enough that there's been a mass movement, then it's not going to be stabilized in the future. A landslide will always happen there. Again, it may take, you know, a geologically long time, but that's always going to be a major hazard. The base of slopes, this is one of your reading quiz feedback that we have. It was, which one of these are not prone to landslide hazards? The base of slopes are definitely prone to landslide hazards. That's where loose debris accumulates, and the bottom of a hill where things like to roll down. So that's a dangerous place. Steep cup slope, anything above that key number 34 degrees. But solid unfractured rock, that's a good place. That's where the wise man built his house, upon the rock, and be a good place for us to build our houses as well, both, you know, spiritually and physically. There's several types of landslides, as you read in your reading assignment. And what type they are depends on how fast they move, what kind of material is moving, and the type of movement that we see. Do they fall, topple, slide, spread, flow? And I'm going to tell you the ones that are on the exam. So here's, I like this image of just the different types laid out that way. I like the visual, the way it's portrayed. So if we go from fastest to slowest, we would start with a rock fall. That's the fastest kind, because literally it's just plummeting to the ground off a steep cliff. On the exam, the phrase, "can you recognize," is a main idea. There's several questions that say, you're looking at an area that has loose sediment that's been deposited in a lobe shape. What type of mass wasting is this? So that's kind of how a lot of these questions are worded. Rockfall, there's no questions about rockfall on the exam. I just like to start with them because they're the quickest kind and pretty easy to see visually. They just come on down. I like this one a lot. The next one, the next fastest is an avalanche. And I set these up to sort of come one at a time. This is a lot all at once. And avalanches are talked about on the exam. We have in the case studies for lesson 10, there's one landslide that happened in Peru. It's Yungay, Peru. It happened in 1970. And this type of disaster, it's an avalanche. It was triggered by an earthquake. The mountain collapsed into a glacier that formed an avalanche that moved 120 miles per hour. And I don't think you've had a chance yet to read the case studies. Is that correct? It's Thursday and they're due tonight. So this is a preview. It was absolutely devastating, and the death toll is 25,000 people. And so, and this is the stuff that's welcome, you guys that have just popped in. I'm glad you're here. We're going through landslide exam prep. Anything that's highlighted in yellow is word for word what you'll see on the exam, or word for word stuff that's in the test bank. You'll see some of these. Anyway, 1970. This is a really interesting case study to learn about, and I hope you enjoy learning about this one. There were several miracles that happened. The death toll was horrible, but many children survived. And anyway, I don't want to give too much away. Also, one of the case studies that you'll learn about is this is Canada, the Frank avalanche. It happened in 1903. And so its type of mass wasting is avalanche as well. But this one, the other one was triggered by an earthquake, and then because it slid into a glacier that kind of just lubricated the massive slide, it moved unbelievably quickly. This one was caused by ice wedging. And where I live in Utah, this is the number one type of mechanical weathering we see. And what happens is as a rock weathers and it starts to get some cracks in the winter, during the day, water will kind of trickle into the cracks. And then at night, when it freezes, it expands. Water is really cool. It's one of the few substances that does this. It expands as it freezes. And what it does is it just pulls things apart. So every time, every night that it freezes, this thing happens over and over and over. And this is actually how they initially quarried the granite for the Salt Lake Temple. Is up the canyon, there's these big, beautiful cuts of granite, and they drilled in holes, and then they'd fill them with water, and slowly they popped off the granite they hauled down for the temple. So the Frank avalanche is caused by ice wedging. The next one, as we move down, is a debris slide or a rock slide. And this terminology is here. It's a slip along a plane. So I've been putting I've been kind of editing these PowerPoints and putting them as PDFs and putting them in the exam prep folder. Have you guys all found those? Because I know it might be kind of frustrating to like try to take notes on everything as I'm going through. I watch my on-campus students do that, and they like get really intense about it. So tonight I'll kind of edit this down, and any like image that I don't have correctly referenced, I need to take out, but I will make a PDF of this and put it in the exam prep folder, just so you know. I won't have everything because I don't have time to like make it all how it should be to be published. Teachers have a certain amount of license using images as like in presentations, but not publishing them. It's, so anyway, sorry. So it's a mass movement and it slides along a surface. This is common when there's shale layers. It's a type of sedimentary rock that's really weak and slippery. And so if the layers are tilted down slope, it makes just a perfect plane to slip down. On your case studies, you'll learn about one in Italy. The Vajont landslide happened in the most beautiful area. You'll enjoy seeing the pictures of this. But this is partially what caused that landslide, was that it slipped along a plane just like this. So the Vajont landslide is a debris slide, would be its type of mass wasting. There's just another image of it. It makes sense. It just sort of slips off. Normally it doesn't happen like on a cliff face like this where you can perfectly see how it's going to erode, and often it's going to be covered in vegetation. And this is, I think specifically this Gros Ventre in Wyoming, but it's the same thing for this one in Italy. It's covered, the vegetation, but there's a layer of clay, and the whole side of the mountain just came down and actually splashed into a reservoir, caused this water to overtop a dam, and it careened through the valley. Anyway, it's a great one to learn about. The next type is a mud flow. These, the exam terminology is they're lumpy, lobe-shaped, and rocky. There's definitely a lot more water in this type of movement, and so it moves quickly, and it's not as coherent as some of the others. The last one we looked at, it's like the whole side of the mountain could slip together. This one is much more just kind of debris, anything that kind of roars down the valley. So there's some unbelievable images of some of these debris flows and videos of them coming down. This is what one looks like as it comes down. They're powerful, they're damaging, they're quick. This bottom picture here's Afghanistan, actually, maybe 3 years ago. And thousands of people were buried in this debris flow that just came right down the mountains. They're especially dangerous. In your presentations, you'll learn about La Conchita, California. And this is technically, we would call it debris flow. And in 1995 was kind of the initial debris flow that came down. And then in 2005, I was going to have these pop up later, but this is 2005. So that property of where it happens once, it will happen again, that definitely happened here. So this was 10 years later. There wasn't any mitigation done on this area initially. It's a beautiful area on the coast. The ocean's very, very close to here. Maybe, 500 meters. And so it's people still like to live here because it's a beautiful place to live, and it's much cheaper to live here than anywhere on either side of it because of this hazard right here, which is a big one. The second time it happened, 10 people were killed. They were warned to evacuate, and it was awful. When I see like the current ones, like 2005, for some reason it makes it more real. When I see them, what happened in the 70s, I don't know, I don't have any frame of reference for that. I wasn't alive, and so like the 2000 ones, I just, wow, how does this still happen? Anyway, so let's see, we did mud flow. Next one's a slump. That's my favorite. Well, maybe creep's my favorite, slump. And this is where it kind of stays together. It's not like a debris flow where it just sort of slides down. It sort of just rotates. It gets sort of slippery, and the whole thing just sort of rotates, and the toe kind of slips down. So it remains intact. And what we would see, like to describe it, would be there's scarps and terraces. Scarps are these like cuts. These we would call the scarps. We do the same thing with fault scarps. It's where there's been a rip in the surface. And the terraces are these flat areas. So we would see scarps, terraces near the top, and then rounded, lumpy, rocky ends like this. So here's another image. I don't think I have it. We'll see. On the like animation, or these, what are these illustrations? It's hard to see how damaging they are, but I think these pictures help a little bit show how damaging they could be. And we can see here's the terraces, and then the scarp is the crack, the fault. Here's a nice one on the shoreline. These are common because there's so much erosion happening here at the base. It weakens the entire area, and so the whole thing will slip down into the water. Yeah, I don't have it in here. One of the landslides, well, let's check. And then the last one, sorry, is creep. And it's the slowest, very slow creep. That's how I always read that. In my mind, it's creep. It's perfect. They just move slowly down the hill. Again, this idea of freeze-thaw cycles kind of propels this slowly along. I like this one. The top's moving downhill slowly to the point that it's moving very top of these beautiful layers of earth. The telltale sign is all of these, but I like the curved tree trunk the best, and that's the one it mentions on the exam. Is the tree can still grow, but because it's slowly moving as it grows, it forms this curved trunk. I love this. And up Sundance, if you know that area, it's all this. All of the trunks are curved this way, slowly moving. You also see it in fences. So how do we prevent landslides? What can we do? There's stuff we can do. The first one's reduce the slope, get it back to below the angle of repose, drain the water. A lot of these types of landslides, they're made much worse when there's a lot of water. Create terraces and rock walls. Plant things with deep root systems to kind of help hold stuff. You can buttress, put a heavy rock blanket on top to try to keep it from moving. What doesn't help is removing the material at the toe of the slope. In your case study, it's Thistle landslide in Spanish Fork, Utah, that this mistake was made over and over. It was a slow landslide, and the bottom of it kept going over the railroad lines, and so they would remove the material from off the railroad ties so they could keep the trains moving, and it just made it worse because it makes the slope steeper. And so it was thistle landslide in your exam, it's keyed as being the most expensive landslide in U.S. history. I think that the Oso landslide has now overtaken that in terms of how expensive it was, but I think your exam, well, I know your exam's still keyed as thistle being the most expensive in U.S. history. Also, you wouldn't want to add water, you wouldn't want to increase the slope, you wouldn't want to cut down the trees. The best thing to do in urban areas where everything's kind of settled out, you know, you're not building new houses, it's already kind of established, the best thing to do is keep the water drained as much as possible and make sure that, you know, there's a setup for when there's heavy rain, that the water can go somewhere that keeps it away from these fragile areas. On your exam, it asks this question: why does California have so many landslides? I don't know why it's focused on California, but the reason why is pretty fascinating. I loved when I learned about this in geology is most of California is stuff that was smeared onto the continent. And what happens is, going back to plate tectonics, when you have subduction zones, remember as that oceanic crust is subducted, often there's islands attached to these oceanic crusts, and islands are continental material, and so it cannot be subducted. So what happens is this convergent plate boundary will bring along its island arcs, and as they hit the subduction zone, they can't go under, and so they just kind of get smeared on, and they slowly stop subduction in that area. And then, you know, millions of years later, another subduction zone develops in the same area, and we have another island arc that's just smeared on to the side of the continent. And most of California is that. It's called accretion. And it's on the exam. It uses the term melange, made of clay-rich ocean sediments that have just been smeared on. So it's clay-rich, so it's inherently unstable. And there's the coastal erosion, the rain, and the climate. It just makes it a place of high risk for many landslides. So in addition to those horrible fires and the way they've stripped the landscape, there's also this added component of risk, the melange. Let's see. Okay, we talked about that. And then, like, in summary, okay, that's where I had also. Here's kind of the key facts. Again, that phrase, once a landslide, always a landslide, is in the question bank. Just to rephrase it, they often happen in the same place. And the Oso landslide, which is one of the case studies for lesson 8, it happened on a known landslide, as did the La Conchita landslide, as did a couple of the others, but those are the two that's kind of focused on in terms of exam questions. So that's what I've got for landslide exam prep. And thank you for coming tonight. So this will open lesson 11, your next exam. Your flood lesson 9, floods, is open. I opened it earlier this afternoon. And so you can jump in there and get started. And we'll do flood exam prep next week. And that's it, unless you have any additional questions. Remember, anytime you watch a class meeting, you can retake an assignment. And so just send me an email and let me know. And I recognize you need to have the grades in before you know what you want to retake. So I'm working on it. I have the doctor's given me a few more days. If I'm not over pneumonia, I've got to like go in and do more tests, and we're working hard on it to get me better. So I appreciate your guys' patience with me. You guys have been really nice. I've gotten lots of nice emails. I appreciate it. So anyway, have a great night. And then if you have any questions, again, you can use your mic or chat. I'm going to stop the recording. And if that's it, have a great night. Laura, I saw that video. It was like one of those things that like popped up on my, I don't even know what it's called. And I watched it and I loved it. I didn't realize it was in New York. I assumed it was like a Great Lake thing, but I haven't looked at it quite yet. They're like being sensational with that term, ice tsunami. Like people click on it because it says tsunami. That's not technically a tsunami, but yeah, I am excited to look at that in a little bit more too. I thought that was really cool to watch that come in. Looks scary. I would have gone clear out of there. Whoever like was videotaping it, what if it just kept coming? That would scare me. But yeah, that was cool. Thanks for bringing that up. Did it do any damage? I just kind of watched a video that showed it coming on like an empty road, but I hadn't, again, like looked at it to see if it had been damaging.
What I read, it said that the ice got as high as 30 feet, and so it was off of Lake Erie, but it was, I can't remember the name of the town, but it was in New York. Wow. And it came up to the riverfront, and so they had a voluntary evacuation, and it said like every house except for 32 houses lost electricity. So it affected like 63,000 homes.
Whoa.
Or like something crazy. But yeah, they said like it was coming up to their patios, and the ice, so I guess the wind was going like 70 miles an hour.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and so they were getting these ice thingies like 30 feet high. It's like nuts.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Wow, and it was getting close to the river, so they were worried it was gonna flood the river.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't know. Yeah, but they were like, we've never seen anything like this, and it's coming up to my patio. I have all this ice, and yeah, I just thought it was the coolest thing. Only because I'm not there, but
right. These are all cool if you're not like without power when it's 20 below zero. Yeah, then it's not so cool.
Yeah, but with what I read, nobody was injured or died or anything. But yeah, like the entire town except for 32 houses lost electricity.
That is crazy. I'm definitely going to show that to my oceanography students on Tuesday. They will love it. The Great Lakes like have this whole, because I don't know anything about them really, because I studied all my stuff in the West, but they have these whole like weather patterns and like there's special things that only happen in the Great Lakes because they're like in the middle of the continent and like they're freshwater, but they have anyway, like as I've like done this class, there's been weird things that happen on those lakes, and I would love to like take a class and learn about, anything about them. I've never seen a lake that big in real life. I have a hard time like imagining what they would look like, but
yeah.
oh man, Tanya. Yeah.
It's gone by then.
When's spring break?
We fly out March 15th, so yeah.
It's like in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I better continue because I bought Wicked tickets and
yeah. My daughter's getting baptized March 16th.
oh, my daughter's getting baptized in August. So.
Man, that's awesome. We're so excited. It'll be great. I mean, my in-laws will be here for like days.
Is that good or bad?
They're on a mission. So I thought we were safe. Like, I mean, I was sad they weren't going to make her baptism, but I was like, well, you know, a year and a half, we'll be safe. But no, they got permission to come. So not so safe. She's thrilled. I mean, I'm happy, but you know.
Is she the only granddaughter?
What?
The only grandchild?
No, they have like 10.
Okay.
They're just, you know, like the mission rules have changed so much in the last 2 years that now that it was like no big deal. I had no idea they could just, because they're in Denver, so they're not like super far, but I didn't know they'd be able to come. Yeah, far things. Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I'm like nervous. Because I have one child. We only have one child, and so like everything we do is kind of like the first and the last. You know, it's like momentous because you know this is the first time I'm gonna send a kid to kindergarten, and the last time I'm gonna send a kid to kindergarten.
Yeah, I have an only child too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Well, I'm older, but I was 39 and we did 2 rounds of in vitro, and we finally got her. But so
she was so wanted.
She was wanted, and we spent all our money to get her. So
yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, it's a different. There's no one else I know that only has one kid.
Now you do.
I know. I
want to see.
You understand.
I want.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm 48 years old. It's not happening.
Biology. Yeah. I know. She was. Yeah. We barely got her here. We did the preeclampsia stuff, and she was premature, and we were at the hospital for months. So we're like happy, you know what I mean? Like we're like that's probably enough of that.
My first round of in vitro didn't work. I was devastated.
Oh man, I can't imagine.
Spent all that money and.
Oh man.
So.
That's
one more time.
Yeah.
Last chance, and it worked. But
I imagine, because with all the hormones they're putting in you, that it just like
I had to give myself shots and everything.
Yeah, aggravates it all. You know, like I feel like emotionally stable sometimes, but like it's not my like. You know, like it's hard to keep all of that in check, and
that was really, really hard. The in vitro was hard on me.
Yeah. Oh man. Well,
I would have done it again if I'd been younger.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
Now I'm the old mom, so.
Well, most people think I'm younger than I am because we just have the one.
Right. Oh, I get all the time. How many older kids do you have?
Yeah. Yeah. I've always I'm thinking I need a better way to say she's an only child, because that makes it seem like bad, or you know what I mean? I
think in our culture,
better phrase.
Like the LDS culture, I think it does come across as you're selfish and you didn't want more.
Uh-huh.
At least that's what people think.
Yeah.
And
I wonder.
that's not the case usually. People don't choose to have an only child,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I only feel old in Utah and Idaho.
Well, right.
Where they're 20 years old and having babies, and then they have, 10 by the time they're 30. So,
Right. I've like lately I've had a hard time like sort of connecting with other women. Sometimes I have a lot of kids because their life is so different than mine.
yeah,
Even though like we're similar and like we're the same religion and like I'm mostly a stay-at-home mom, but I also do BYU Idaho and I teach for UVU.
right,
So I'm kind of like in 30 hours a week. I'm not quite full time, but I'm,
right.
but I don't, because she's 8 and so, or almost 8, she is like self-sufficient,
Oh,
like,
yeah, they are, but they can't be home by themselves. And if they're
right.
sick, then what do you do? And we don't live around family. We don't have anybody.
Oh, that's hard.
And so we've chosen for me to stay home, but I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I think they might have to do something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
COVID comes, and then what?
Yeah. I totally understand that. Yeah. I like this year is the first year I've taught on campus since in like 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Because I've always done BYU Idaho. I've always, done a class a semester.
Mhm.
But it was like I've taught this class for 8 years.
And
And
you do a fantastic job.
oh yeah, it's a great job. I love it. I
You
love
do
it.
good. You're so energetic about your information. Your
That's awesome. Sometimes I get marked down. Like I was looking at my student evaluations, there was like someone that was like, she gets so excited about all this death and carnage. Like, have a little empathy and sympathy for
right.
others. And I'm like, well, yeah, yeah, I know.
I'm not gonna lie. I was dreading, like, I was like, oh no, somebody that really knows their stuff and is really into it. Because sometimes you can get those professors that, they're like, oh, you did the work, great job, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, she's really gonna like grade, and but I
No,
learned a ton.
that's good. I had
So
to, I've I've focused on this exam prep like this semester, like, and I've to like the point of like being deficient in grading because
are the tests, exams, and are the grades improving?
yeah, you guys did way better
Oh,
this
I don't know.
semester.
I find that the exams aren't that hard,
Yeah, that's
but
good because
I
you've been
think that
here.
the questions that they ask about the case studies are the hardest, because a lot of the questions sometimes aren't even included in the presentation.
I know.
So it's like,
It's such
I
a
don't
problem.
know. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I've not done this before where I've added like information about the case studies in these exam preps, but I'm kind of to the point now where like because I've like for the last like 3.5 years I've been the online instructor that does the course improvement stuff.
Oh,
And
uh-huh.
so like I've written like all the feedback that's part of the course itself. And I've totally reformatted all the grading and the labs. Like it's been this whole thing, but the exams, I can't get the
Right.
on-campus people to change them at all.
Well,
And
I just find that if it's not in the case study, I don't know.
yeah, it's not fair to test on it.
Yeah.
You don't have time to research all these case studies on your own. And 8
Oh.
in a week,
Well,
that's a
and like
lot of
a lot
stuff
of
to
them, like, I
remember.
don't know, like the one that we just did.
Hmm.
I was on I don't even know how to say it. I don't even, the one in Alaska.
Oh yeah, that one's awesome.
It is awesome, but it's
Yeah.
really not about a landslide. I feel it's like it's more about the tsunami.
You're right. It really is more about the tsunami.
Because the girl I did the thing with, she's like, I don't know if I went in the right direction, but I couldn't really find anything out about landslide. All they talked about was tsunami, and I think we went in the right direction. I don't know what else to say.
Right.
So,
because that was the interesting part anyway.
yeah.
Find like the eyewitness account where the father and son were in a boat.
Yes, I did that part. I did.
Went on the wave over into the ocean and survived the whole thing.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's like one of the most exciting case studies, I think, in the whole class. That's awesome. You got to do that one.
I was glad I was like, oh, why did I pick this one? It's not really about a landslide, but it was really interesting.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. So,
yeah, for sure.
I don't know if there's any questions about it.
You know what? There's not.
Yeah, see?
There isn't. That's the other frustrating thing is like, if you're going to do 8 case studies, then you should have at least a question from each.
Well, and I feel like when I take my test, that's all I get is the case study questions.
That's the what?
I get a ton of case study questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and I know that's what I missed on the test when I took it.
And like some of the, it's not even either. Like some of the exams have a lot of case studies and some of the exams have very little.
Right. Like, well, I felt like this last one had a lot.
The volcano one.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I should find, I'll have to email you and ask you what I missed on the last test because I have no idea, but I'm sure it's case study stuff.
Yeah, you can definitely do that.
Because I know that's what I listed on the one before that. Did you get my message about the one before, the first one we took?
Did I not respond?
Well, I was right in the middle of taking that stinking test and the school canceled school.
The what?
The school had canceled our school here, canceled school.
Oh.
Because of weather.
Oh.
And I was right in the middle of taking that stinking test and I had to leave and go get my daughter.
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
Yeah. What did you do?
Well, it was 2 hours. We had 2 hours for that first one.
Uh-huh.
So luckily, when I got home, I still had like 40 minutes left.
Oh my gosh.
Going, I just want you to know that I didn't take this long to take the test. They canceled school and I had to leave.
It's like Mission Impossible. You got to drive through a Rexburg blizzard to...
And not only that, I had to pick up some other kids.
You're not in Rexburg. That's right.
I'm in Ida. I'm in Soda Springs.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm telling you, I had to take other kids home too. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do if the time's up when I get I'm looking up answers.
You know what? I did not get that email.
Oh.
I would have remembered that one.
I swear I sent it. But
I had a student, someone had to accidentally clicked on it when they were reviewing for the exam and accidentally opened it. And I was like, well, if that ever happens again, just close it immediately and email your instructor because we can see, how much time you spent and, we could reopen it. So for you, I would have said, just leave it open. It's okay if it goes beyond the time limit.
I could have died. I was like, okay, I've got time right now. I've looked over everything. I'm going to take this test. And then I'm like, I was glad that they had 2 hours on it. So otherwise I would have been frantically trying to get a hold of you.
Yeah, for sure. So Galaxy Tab A8, welcome.
Oh, that's Abby.
Oh, how are you?
I couldn't figure out how to put my name on it on this device.
Galaxy Tab A8 works just fine. Do you have questions? Did you come for questions?
I just have a quick question about after we've read all of the case study presentations, are we required to comment on them on the discussion board?
No. Nope.
Okay.
There might be like you used to have to, and there, if you see any like anything that says, you know, comment on the presentations, let me know so we can get it out of the class, because you don't have to anymore.
Right. This was just the first week that I wasn't part of doing the case studies.
Oh yeah, nice.
And so I noticed the first that we did that there were all these comments on the discussion board, and I'm like, okay, I don't have a case study to do.
Right. I do this instead. Yeah, I totally understand. No, you don't have to. And we went through on the exam prep, we talked about the questions for the case studies. So if you get a chance, watch that recording.
Okay.
It'll help you know which ones to study a little more closely. Latoya Bay, no. So what Tanya did. There's no questions on it, but it's really interesting. It caused the tsunami. Oh, so yes. Frank, yes. The rest. Yes, several on the Vegant. The Italy one. That's a good one too. Anything else?
I didn't realize when I signed up for the case studies that I would do them back to back, and I'm glad I did, because now I have all this time to work on the final stuff.
It's a lot easier when you're not. The presentation weeks are pretty low key. Yeah, work on your final for sure. Study.
All righty. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night and feel better.
You too. Thank you. Bye.